The Big Ten has hired Tony Petitti as commissioner. He's going to replace Kevin Warren. This is the second conference that has really gone out of left field somewhat for its commissioner. I believe it was the Big 12 that first went out of left field, going with Brett Yormark, who worked with Rock Nation. This is an intriguing hire. For those who don't know, Tony Petitti has spent time he worked with CSTV, responsible for the day-to-day operations, kind of was responsible for it merging and being absorbed into CBS Sports. And now you have the CBS College Sports Network. That was back in 2008. He was head of the MLB Network, which launched in January of 2009. He used to be the chief operating officer of Major League Baseball, taking over for Rob Manfred in that role when Manfred became commissioner. And most recently, he was the president of Activision Blizzard. That is a video game holding company. So the Big Ten is going the esports route. Which I think is a little bit shocking, but that's also out of left field. That's also thinking forward to the future, because we know esports has been a very trendy thing for a long time. Now, what does this mean for Tennessee? I mean, not Tennessee, the SEC in general. What does this mean for college football? Well, Tony Petitti obviously dealt directly with SEC football when he worked at CBS. He also is highly responsible for nationalizing the sport. For those who don't know the history of college football, the sport really became nationalized in 1998, the year Tennessee won the national championship with the BCS. And Tony Petitti was instrumental in doing that. He was also instrumental in the expanded MLB playoff and the Field of Dreams game. So he's forward-thinking. He's innovative. But is he innovative for the right reasons? And this is why I say that. And that's a weird thing to say. But I don't think the expanded MLB playoff is good for the sport. I'm going to tell you that, guys, that right now. People disagree with me. You can disagree with me all day. I think it was best when it was stuck at 8. The BCS largely worked. But it started the trend of nationalizing college football, which became the 14 playoff, and now is the 12-team playoff. I don't know if that's good for the sport. The sport seemed a lot more exciting back in the early 1990s when your championship, your thrilling season was winning your conference and winning one of the elite bowl games. And yes, you spread the love a little bit. And the national championship was a bonus. The more you nationalize these college sports, the less thrilling a season is unless you win the national title. Now, from a revenue perspective, it's great. So, and that was his job, so you have to give him credit for that. I don't know long-term if it's smart, though, in terms of generating interest with the expanded playoff. Look, we're going to talk about this at another point in time, but the fact of the matter is the expanded playoff is not going to create new Cinderella teams, or it's not going to open the door for more teams to win the national title. What it's really going to do is keep the title in the hands of the elites. Once you went to the college football playoff, it lessened the likelihood of the best team not winning it every year. The 12-team playoff is going to take that even further, guys. I just have to say that. So Tony Petitti is forward-thinking. He doesn't rely on tradition. You give him credit for that. At the same time, you don't know if his philosophies are best for every sport. And that's something we're going to have to find out. Now, I will say this with the Big Ten versus the SEC. Here's my hot take. And this is a kind of a disagreement Dave and I've had, so it's probably unfair for me to bring this up now with Dave not here, because he would usually give the other side. The Big Ten has been run better than the SEC for the past 10, 12 years, 14 years. It just has. I'm going to say that. It was Kevin Warren, or maybe it wasn't even Kevin Warren, though. It could have been Jim Delaney. But either way, they've been running it better than the SEC. The SEC just has a better product to sell. The Big Ten has just three schools that you could ever consider in this day and age in college football be national championship programs: Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And Michigan and Penn State are to a much lesser degree than Ohio State. Okay. Ohio State's really the only one. The SEC has 6 schools in the conference that have won national championships since the Big Ten's, since any other Big Ten team outside of Ohio State. Those schools are Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, LSU. Have all won national championships since any Big Ten team outside of Ohio State has won one. Most notably, Tennessee's about to add Oklahoma and Texas. The Big Ten is about to add USC and UCLA. Again, that's 2 more national championships since the Big Ten's most recent champion. You add UCLA, that's 1 more, 2005. A vacated title, I might add. 2004, a vacated title, I might add. So if you factor in the idea that that title is vacated, the SEC is about to have 8 teams that officially have a claimed national title more recently than any Big Ten team out of Ohio State, and that is after both conferences expand to 16. The Big Ten still got the $7 billion TV deal, and the SEC got the $3 billion TV deal. Why? SEC negotiated first. They latched themselves onto one network, and the Big Ten shopped themselves around with CBS, Fox, NBC, you name it. They actually willingly got an NBC deal, even though Notre Dame still has that NBC deal. Now, long term, there's some promotional value to other smaller sports that you could probably get from ESPN that will help the SEC, and they care about it. They are thinking about this from a different perspective. But the point is the SEC can think about it from a different perspective because there's a lot of great brands within a certain region, so they can still stay the SEC. The Big Ten doesn't have that luxury. Is it true that that brand size should be more valuable than TV market size? Yes. There's a bubble here. There's a bubble that's going to pop. I don't know when. But the Big Ten's expansion moves were about the TV market size because that bubble still exists and they're cashing in on the bubble, and you can't blame them. And that bubble is this. Networks are paying more for schools based on the TV market size they're in rather than their brand size. So the Big Ten is cashing in on the stupidity of networks. Just to give you guys an example, USC played Utah in the Pac-12 title game. Utah, Salt Lake City had more people watching that game than Los Angeles. Not kidding you on that. By that logic, the TV markets should be irrelevant. But that's not how the networks are thinking. So to the networks, USC is still a more valuable brand. Now, they're in a bigger market, and just historically, traditionally, they are a more valuable brand. But Utah's bringing more viewers. Utah probably is a more valuable brand if you really look past that. But the Big Ten knows what the networks are thinking. That's the interesting part of the story, is the Big Ten is finessing the networks. The SEC has a better product overall, but it ain't that hard to sell the SEC product, guys. I'm sorry. Sometimes we give commissioners and leadership too much credit because they have something you can't screw up. I say this with the NFL all the time. Roger Goodell's not that great of a commissioner. Do you know how hard it is to not make the NFL successful? It's just a naturally amazing product. It's like selling oil. It's like having oil. Unless you're Jimmy Haslam, you can't really bankrupt yourself selling oil. Okay? So it's very easy to sell the NFL. It's very easy to sell the SEC. The Big Ten is a big time conference, but it's not on the SEC's level. So for them to have twice the value of the SEC, you got to give their leadership some credit. They are forward thinking with what they're doing. What this really says, though, is Tony Petitti is more innovative and forward thinking, and this leads to more of the nationalization of college football. We're probably closer and closer to just an organization of the 2 major conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. We'll go to the message boards real quick. Mr. Jones, before you know it, the season will be 8 games long, and they'll have a 64-team bracket stretched out for 8 weeks. Mr. Jones, I really hope they don't do that. I'm praying they don't do that. I think a 12-team playoff still works because the regular season now matters. It still matters. You're still going for the bye or the home game on a campus, so there's a lot to play for, and it at least brings more teams into the fold. But yeah, I'm with you. I really hope they don't do that. Travis says, why would you not want the absolute best team to be the champion, though? Okay, Travis, that's a good question. I'm gonna tell you why. There's something in sports called the element of randomness, which is to say that on any given day, which sport has more randomness introduced into it? Baseball and hockey have the most. Baseball and hockey, the best team in the MLB, the best team in the NHL, the worst team in the MLB the worst team in the NHL. Randomness decides the outcome. I'd say is about like 70% of the game, honestly, in just one game. That's why you have to play 162 games to really separate the teams. Basketball is a little bit less. It's a lot less random, actually. And when you have like a 7-game playoffs, like the NBA does, almost the best team wins it every time. Football is even less random, but because it's a 1-game playoff, there's more randomness in who wins it. If you have the best team winning it every year, you have no suspense because typically year in and year out, the best team is the same team. The college football playoff has not done college football any favors. It's done the SEC a lot of favors. It's not done college football any favors. It's become way too predictable who's going to be there. And it's also become way too predictable over who doesn't belong, which is leading to increased interest among the teams that know they could compete and less interest everywhere else. That's not a good formula. That's not a good formula at all. And I think long term, that could be disastrous for the program. I mean, disastrous for the sport. Look, sport was at its best when Colorado and Georgia Tech shared a national title in 1990. Neither of those teams were close to the best team in college football that year. So what you want is, you don't want it totally random where you don't want like a 3, 4, 5 loss team winning the title. What you like is the idea of a collection of a few elite teams. I don't know, 9, 10 maybe. And one of them could win it. And you also want the chance that maybe somebody that wasn't even in the top 25 to start the year could maybe sneak through and win it, as Oklahoma did in 2000. You're not seeing that much anymore. Mr. Jones says Big Ten is weak. You never know how good they actually are because they face no competition. The only reason the Big Ten wins is because they face cakewalk teams week after week, while the SEC beats up on each other all year, playing good teams. Goodell is Vince McMahon. Okay. Mr. Jones, you're right about the first two, but the point is that speaks to how well run the Big Ten is, that they can get a $7 billion deal while the SEC gets a $3 billion deal. You're right. The SEC is better in every way. It's a better product. You and I could sell the SEC. It's good on its own. There's not a lot of talent in selling the SEC as a product. There is some more talent in selling the Big Ten, and the Big Ten leadership is doing that. Mr. Jones, Goodell is Vince McMahon? No. Say whatever you want about Vince McMahon. He took wrestling international in the 80s. Goodell inherited something that was already at a certain level and has presided over its rise to a new level. Vince McMahon didn't preside over the rise of WWE, formerly WWF. He created it.